It's me, it's Queen Osset Haru, and thank you for joining me for another wonderful edition of Ask an Aquarius. If you haven't already, please hit the red subscribe button and smack the bell. Well, guys, I am almost caught up in my emails. I have like 15 more that need to be responded to. So I'm dealing with ones that are actually as far back as November. So I'm finally getting through them. And I got to one today that I was like, oh my God, this is pretty good. I wanted to discuss it. This one came from a woman named Goldie. And Goldie says she's in a relationship with an Aquarius. And one day she called the Aquarius thirsty. That was the word she used. And the Aquarius really did not like being called thirsty. And Goldie says she really didn't mean anything by it. It's just a word that she uses. And the Aquarius probably was acting thirsty. To be honest with you, that's probably what it really was. And Aquarius didn't want to hear that. So now, well, after it happened, they argued about it, then they talked about it, and then they worked it out. So it was squashed. They moved on with their lives. And then every time the Aquarius gets drunk, the Aquarius brings it back up. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, so it's not over. You might think y'all worked it out, but Goldie, that ain't over. If the Aquarius keeps bringing it up when they're drunk, that means that rationally, logically speaking, they have told themselves, let it go. She said what she said. She didn't mean it that way. You being overly sensitive, let it go. That's what he's telling himself, okay? But it's still bothering him. Because if he's bringing it up when he's drunk, that means it's still in his subconscious. The old folks always say, when you drunk, you speak with a sober mind. That means that when you're drinking, the truth comes out. What you really think, what you really feel, what's really going on usually comes out when a person is drinking. Because they don't feel the need to hold it back. They have no inhibitions. They feel free, and their tongue and their lips are freer than they usually are. The things they normally wouldn't say because they didn't want to hurt a person or they didn't want to admit it to themselves, we normally won't say certain things, you know? So when a person is drunk, they let go of that filter. And that's pretty much the bottom line. So if he's getting drunk and mentioning it more than once, that means it's something that is not resolved for him. So what you need to do is discuss it again when he's sober. Because that means that, well, you can't have a conversation with somebody who's drunk anyway, seriously. They probably won't remember it half of the time or comprehend it the other half of the time. But you should have the conversation again when he's awake and sober. Because it's not over for him. His feelings are hurt. Whatever, he probably, most of the time when a word hurts somebody like that, they have an association with that word. So either his feelings about being thirsty, calling someone else thirsty, or somebody else that called him thirsty in the past, or feeling thirsty, being insecure and thinking, am I a little thirsty? You know, one of those things is what's bothering him. And if I were you, I would just get to the bottom of the reason why. I know you said you use that word all the time. You didn't mean anything by it. But he has what I call an emotional charge associated with that word. I would try to find out why. And then I would try to discuss it with him. And I would keep discussing it with him until it really was alleviated. Because that's what's happening here. His subconscious is bringing it up to the surface every chance it gets. So it's still very alive and very fresh in his mind and in his heart chakra. It's there. The energy is there. It has gone nowhere, even though you said it was squashed. Now, mind you, you sent me this information in November. It is March. So by now, you guys might have actually worked this out. But if you did not, which is often the case with couples, they usually leave things lingering. That's what I would do. I would talk to my Aquarius and say, you know, the other night when you were drinking, you brought up when I called you thirsty again. And that tells me that maybe someplace inside of you hasn't forgiven me or hasn't released it. Do you want to talk about it? That's how I would go about it. And if they didn't want to talk about it, I would just say, I understand you don't want to talk about it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. And I would leave it at that. If they did want to talk about it, I would try to get to the bottom of why it bothered them. Did somebody call them thirsty before? What was the deal? Because like I said, anytime I've had a problem like that, it's because the person has an emotional charge attached to that particular word. Maybe his first love broke his heart and laughed at him and called him thirsty. It's always something like that. And it's usually not attached to what you did. It's attached to the word and the history he has with the word. You see? So that's what I would try to do, because it's very possible that if he talks about it, then he'll be able to let it go. Now, another thing, Aquarius are forgiving. So unless it's something that's really, really awful, we are pretty forgiving. So you have a pretty good chance, if he talks through it, of him letting it go and forgiving it, And in the future, be very careful what you say to people in general, but specifically what you say to your Aquarius. Aquarius are sensitive, and if you say enough things to him that hurts him bad enough, he will ghost on you. He will shut off is what's going to happen. And then he's, either going to be gone or he's going to be still with you and shut off. Some Aquariuses will shut off on you, but they still with you, which is the weirdest thing in the world. It's even worse than them leaving. If you ask me, I would rather you just leave than still be here and not connecting with me, And sometimes an Aquarius will do that, especially if they need you, they'll just cut off from you. They'll disconnect from you. They'll emotionally disconnect, but they're still physically in your apartment, So sometimes that will occur. So be very careful with it. I'm not saying walk around on eggshells around an Aquarius. I'm saying be mindful of the things that you say to any person, because continuously saying things, calling them names, hurting their feelings, that's over time verbal, emotional, mental abuse. So you don't want to be in that category either, And that's not to say that people are perfect. People don't make mistakes. They don't say things they don't mean, because they do. I'm just saying be more mindful and be more careful of the things that you say to people, especially to Aquarius, because a lot of people will forget what you said. And Aquarius, that shit plays over in our mind over and over like a freaking movie sometimes. And we keep hearing it and seeing it over and over and over. And like I said, if pushed too far, the Aquarius shuts off. So be very mindful of that, and be mindful of that about anybody that you're seeing. But particularly that sensitivity in Aquarius is something that kills a lot of relationships. So if you want to maintain this relationship, it's good for you to remember that. Okay? All right, Goldie, I really hope that helps you, and thank you so much for your question. All right, guys, I gotta go. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and pass it on to someone else who has said something to an Aquarius that they just won't let go. Because it does happen. All right, guys, if you want to get in contact with me, all of my information will be underneath here. If you want to send me a love donation, my PayPal will be here. And if you want to see if you want to talk to me on Facebook or Instagram, I'll put that information under here, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow, because if you have to ask someone, you might as well ask an Aquarius. So I'm going to come back tomorrow with a lot more to say. Okay? See you later.